What are we watching?
I'm not sure exactly. This is what happens when we let viewers submit videos to us.
Oh my goodness. So Raphael sends us a lot of entries, but almost everyone he sends us, and there's some of them are really good, but almost everyone he sends us is Anthony's son. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
Well, that we have to talk about that too.
Yeah, we have to talk about that. Yes, that was Pine Sap.
That actually could very well be Pine Sap.
It could have been Pine Sap.
Does dance that way. Yeah, every video Raphael sends us has like copyright stuff in it, but they're all funny. But like I was going through them today because I couldn't find an opening video. So Rob goes, "Well, I got something I could play." He's like, "It's kind of gay." I'm like, "Well, that'll fit well since we called you gay on the last stream."
We got to talk about this too. You set me up for that.
So wait, so I don't see the Facebook comments. Who's in the Facebook comments?
Where
you said in the Facebook comments,
my mother.
She was watching when I said that last episode.
Yeah. Well, I was watching too. But what was funnier is so New Year's Eve, my boys were with my mom at her house for New Year's Eve, and she saw I just talked to her on the phone. She saw us go on. She's like, I didn't know what was going on. So she put that on the TV, on her Apple TV. And next thing she knows, Matthias, my 5-year-old, is asking her, what does it mean if daddy's gay, Nana?
Oh man.
So thanks for that, Aunt.
It's so funny, like you forget like family members do check the show out on occasion, you know. It's like every once in a while I'll go to a family event and somebody be annoyed with me, and it's like, oh man, what did I say on air? Like I'm always saying something. Like my mom actually said, she goes, "Aunt, I would love to like act like just put one episode on in front of Dad one time." She's like, "But I'm always afraid you're gonna say something about Dad."
Just tell her you only keep the really, 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 really personal stuff that you should never tell anyone private for our 100 viewers on Locals.
That's it. It's perfect place to go. And
the 1,000 people that listen to every audio podcast.
Yeah, that's actually true. We do get a decent amount of people listening on audio. Like we actually place on Buzzsprout, right?
Yeah, top 5%.
That's pretty good. Okay, before we get started, you guys please go to our our merch store, and you guys could get
which is shop.avoidingbabylon.com.
Shop@avoidingbabylon.com. You guys can get all sorts of fun stuff, shirts, things like that. So the reason we also please hit like and subscribe. We're actually doing a little bit better with subs in the past week or two.
Have you told them our goal for the year?
We want to get to 25,000.
We're at 15,000 now, so we need 10,000 more people this year. So please share the videos with people that whether they will enjoy them or not. Hate watchers are fine too. We love hate watchers,
and the subs like help you get bigger guests and stuff. So look, the last video was kind of off the rails. We put the similar title. Anthony and Nick managed to piss off Eastern Catholics and Rob in 2 beautiful hours.
Yes, I have seen lots of comments about Eastern Catholics.
I hope everybody knows it was just me trying to be fun. Look, when I drink, I don't know. Like the other thing, I kept cutting Ryan off like really bad, which I try not to do now as much as I used to. Like I try to pay attention, but a few drinks in, there's no like every time Ryan would try to say something, I was like, no, wait, and I would just pummel over him. I felt bad for the guy. If you get to 25,000, maybe Peugeot will. I don't think so.
I've said too many things about him, probably.
Oh, I don't know if that'll get back to him, but it's more just he just is one guy that won't budge. I mean, I've gotten pretty much most of the people I've tried to get on have gone on. Now, I did talk a little smack about Frad last episode, and I totally forgot that I did.
Oh, I wonder why.
I completely forgot, and then I went back and re-listened to parts of the show, and I was like, oh no. So I guess I was saying, since Matt's had Jordan Peterson on and guys like that, maybe he's like too big to talk to us and stuff because he wasn't responding to my emails. I got a text from Matt Frad yesterday. So Matt Frad texted me, which I never even had his number before, and now I have his number. So he said, "Hey,
So the trolling worked, in other words.
it worked." So he said, "Matt Frad here. Quote what you said on live stream last night. I don't know if you've been texting me or not, but I had to. He had to have his number changed. So he thought I was texting him, and his number got changed. But he wasn't avoiding me. He's just been very busy, in other words. So
He wasn't
I
avoiding Babylon?
no, he wasn't apparently. So I apologize to Matt if I said anything. I don't even. It's just one of those shows, man. But people did seem to enjoy me just saying whatever came to mind. So
I missed one episode, and let's see. I come back to comments from angry Eastern Catholics. I see a text from Matt Frad saying you talked about him. I see emails from people saying that we're meeting up in the spring, apparently, and they were supposed to email me to set it up. So, yeah, it was an interesting show that I wasn't even a part of.
Dude, it was a pretty messy one. Like, we started playing. All right, so that's why we're going to do this tonight, because I have clips of James White discussing my tweet. And then the thing is, it's not really about me. It's more about Calvin Robinson and what they're doing to Calvin Robinson. But I think I played like 15 seconds of the clip and then got sidetracked, and we never talked about it again the rest of the episode. So we're going to play that clip tonight. And then I do have...
Was Nick really extreme?
Yeah, a lot of people were asking if Nick's a sedevacantist.
I saw those comments too. I even deleted some, to be honest.
Which he's not. He's not. He just has very extreme views when it comes to the Novus Ordo Mass. Nick will be joining us in a little while. Anthony also said Rob was going to pay $500 for his friend to go on a retreat. I said something like that. I don't think I actually said Rob was going to pay for it. Probably we're going to subsidize a few people is what I said. But oh, here he is.
Oh, here's the Sede now.
Here's the crypto Sede.
What's up, y'all? How's it going?
We were just talking about the comments from last episode and everybody mad about me and my Eastern Catholic rants and you and your sedevacantist tendency, which you're not.
Which I'm not, but you'd think with how much I rail on the Novus Ordo, they would be like, just Nick being the old grandpa complaining in the corner, the weird uncle.
Well, the thing is, we're going to do the James White thing first. We're not going to bury the lead, but then we have...
We already have.
Well,
did you guys apologize? Did you apologize, Anthony, to Mr. Frad?
I did. I just apologized to Matt. Matt was very gracious. He reached out and he did text me. So Matt and I are fine. Everything's cool. I don't think I said anything that bad. I think I might have said he's an arrogant douche. I might have said that, but I didn't mean it. I was like questioning if that's why he's no longer talking to me. But clearly,
let's just say that the policy of this show going forward is Anthony must have 4 drinks before we go on, because that is the best episodes.
The New Year's resolution, I gave up drinking, not permanently, but for a period. I have to do a period of no drinking because I get so dehydrated. Like I went to bed after that episode so dehydrated that it was. I felt terrible for 2 days in a row. So I finally today feel a lot better. But all right, so let's get the James White clip up and we'll actually play the thing through. And there's 2 clips. One is just about my tweet, and then the follow-up is what he's doing with Calvin Robinson. And then I have a few tweets showing what they're trying to do is get him canceled from a conference that he's supposed to be speaking at. But there's also a question that Calvin puts in there that I think is kind of interesting in terms of what can we do with people that aren't Catholic? Like, what is an appropriate amount of ecumenism, I'd say.
Sure.
What is that?
Answering.
No, just
all right, so let's run through. Let's play the James White clip.
Like the original one?
The original one, I think it's like
from Tuesday to 2:47.
Yeah, let me see. So the original one.
Yeah, I got it.
Also, when we go to locals tonight, we have an amazing Monty Python clip I want to play. I would have been an amazing opening video, but we get copyright strike on it, so we couldn't open with it.
We probably are going to get copyright for the
Table of Plenty.
Yeah,
let's hope not.
Oh, you guys played the Table of Plenty?
Well, it was the opening video tonight.
I'm so sad I wasn't there.
Were you ever exposed to that?
Oh, actually, really through this show, believe it or not, like way back in the day where we would open with that. Like Because I avoided the Nova sort of like plague.
Jim sent me that video actually. All right, let's play the white clip.
Now he's on that. So they start looking into his tweets and things.
Yeah, please don't look into Anthony's tweets, guys.
I always say, please don't judge me.
And on the 27th, so 3 days ago now, there's a young guy. It's at Catholic IZM1. Anthony is his name.
Clearly Catholicism with a Z.
And what this guy does is he posts tweets that are real short, extremely controversial, and are just simply meant to get engagement.
It's called trolling, James. It's called trolling.
I guess that's how you make money on Twitter now. My account is not monetized, so I don't know. But evidently, if you get people retweeting you or liking you, and the bigger the accounts are that do so, I guess the more money you make or something. I read something about it, but don't have any real experience in it, so I don't know. But there are people making big bucks on YouTube, on Twitter, and stuff like that. And as normal, we being the master marketers that we are, we're living on the bleeding edge. That's us. We are.
This is your red Solo cup.
Yeah. Anyway, so this guy Anthony posted the following. I guess I might as well put that one back down here.
Wait, pause it, Rob, because it's not just that he dresses like a villain. Me and Nick pointed out he's wearing a pectoral cross, like he thinks he's a bishop. Like I call him the Protestant Pope because of it. Like he's wearing a pectoral cross. It's very interesting that he does that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very weird, in all honesty.
Spend all those. All right. Now, for the record, I will tell you guys how much I make on Twitter. It's not much. Like, it's really not much. Like, there's months where it'll be. So they pay you every 2 weeks. I think the most I've ever gotten was like $130, and the least I've gotten is like 80. So it's somewhere between 80 and $130 every 2 weeks, maybe $250 a month. It's not even enough to pay a car bill. It's not big bucks. Like, I'm just being honest with everybody. That's what it is. So
doesn't even pay for the tickets he gets for tweeting while driving.
Exactly. It's not much. Like it's for the exorbitant amount of time I spend doing it, it's not worth it. So, but I do it not for the money. I do it for the laughs. Like I find it funny. Like it's a bonus that they throw me a couple of shekels every month. But for the most part, I'm just doing it because it makes me laugh.
For the tee-hees and the ha-has.
Still grossly overpaid. All right, let's go back. Let's finish this out.
Here's Protestia. I have a couple different versions of this now, but there's Anthony. The thief on the cross was saved because
he has a couple different versions because you tweet that tweet every 2.5 weeks.
Well, I've perfected it. That's why. Okay, so the first time I tweeted it, I wasn't sure if it was too far. So the first time I tweeted it, it was like in response to a Protestant talking, because the Protestants always got faith alone and look at the thief. Blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but actually, I the thief was probably saved because Mary was praying at the foot of his cloth. Like I wrote probably the first time because I didn't know if I'd offend Catholics. But like Nick and I were talking about it last episode, it's like it sounds like one of those pious things that like you might read in the Glories of Mary.
I mean,
you didn't.
I would say it's accurate through her titles of mediatrix and co-redemptrix,
which is
exactly that's about as far as I'd go with it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the whole point of it was to rile people up. I mean,
you're good at that.
Oh, I am. We should make that one a shirt, by the way. That would be a good shirt.
I'll have to figure out how to turn that into a shirt somehow.
Yeah, Protestia always posts the best Catholic stuff. All right, let's finish it out.
Because Mary prayed for him at the foot of his cross. The thief on the cross was saved because Mary prayed for him at the foot of his cross. Now, I'll be honest with you. I had never heard anyone ever say that. Now,
there's a reason for that.
Maybe I've seen it in the Glories of Mary by Liguri or something. I don't know, but I don't have any recollection of ever having heard anybody say this before. I've never seen it used as an argument.
Just because
I
it
wrote a book
wasn't.
almost a quarter century ago now. Well, more than a quarter century
Boy, he's
ago.
old.
That's 1999. So yeah, 25 years ago.
A year before,
On
after
the
I was
subject
born.
of Mary, another redeemer? Question mark. Because the push was on to have Mary.
Was that all right? So I cut it there. Yeah, the push was on to have Mary's title as co-redemptrix and mediatrix of all graces, right? So that's where
Has
he's
he
going to go
heard
with
of
that.
Saint? Has he heard of Saint Dismas? I don't know if you guys know the story, but like probably people in the chat, you guys know this, the famous story of Saint Dismas. It's told around Christmas time, where Saint Dismas was an early saint. His story is essentially that he was a thief and a robber for a long time,
And he was
and he was
baptized.
well, no, check this out. So he was a thief and a robber for a long time, and then he for 1 year, right? He was a thief along the Bethlehem Way, and 1 year he came into contact with Our Lady and our Lord. It was when Our Lady was going with our Lord pregnant to Bethlehem with Saint Joseph.
What-
You gonna correct me, Rob?
So Dismas was about the same age as Christ. So Dismas was a child. His father was part of a bandit group, and Dismas.
Oh, that's right. And he was with them.
Dismas was
Yeah.
sick or lame or had some sort of disability, and like Christ bathed in this pool by where Dismas lived, and
That's right.
or yeah, something like that. And then Dismas
Where do we
bathed in it after it was healed.
Do we get that from the Golden Legend, or is that from somewhere else?
Either
This is from
Anne Catherine Emmerich or Mary of
some of
Agreda, I think.
some of it's ancient, like very, very ancient. The point I was going to make though was if memory's right, he ends up being the thief on the cross,
Right.
and he looks down, and what does he see? He sees the same woman that he beheld as an infant, and then he looks up and he sees, of course, the same boy that was bathing in the pool next to him. The point is that James's perception of Catholicism and our devotion to Mary isn't even historically Protestant, because of course people can go to Luther, they can go to Calvin, and they can read their writings about the pious customs of Christians and how great Our Lady is, etc., etc. James is operating out of essentially a like 18th, 19th century version of Protestantism, which is quite sad. But yeah, of course, it completely conforms with Catholic theology.
But more than that, right? Like even their understanding of how humans work, like how civilizations are built, like when you go to a place that's thoroughly Catholic, and you hear these pious legends, like the story of Dismas, like the statues we build. There's something about a culture when they actually put their religion first, and not something like liberty or something like democracy, because you see it in our own culture, where Protestants will tell you things like, we worship Mary and the saints because we have statues to them, but they have statues to Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, and they have holidays for, like, I saw Danny today saying anytime you put something about, like, anytime you venerate Mary, you end up making holidays to her, and becomes idol worship. And it's like, dude, our entire culture, American culture, is built off these secular heroes. It's absurd. Instead of having heroes of the Christian faith, which is what the saints are, they're just the heroes of the Christian faith, and you make holidays around them to remind your people of the thing that built the civilization.
I mean, think about it. More Protestants will probably watch the Super Bowl on Super Bowl Sunday than will go to some sort of church service on Super Bowl Sunday.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like gently chastised my parents not too long ago, because my parents are in this weird stage where they're very clearly, without admitting it, kicking the tires of Catholicism. but their quote unquote churches this past Christmas, they're not having services. Why? Because they've made it a day where you go and you be with your family, right? And so what's so funny to me is that the same evangelicals who will always meme the Creasters, right, the Easter and Christmas Christians, are the same people whose churches aren't even open on Christmas.
That's
right?
so
It's completely
bizarre.
secular. It's so wild. It's so hypocritical.
So bizarre, especially, well, Christmas. What is Christmas? It's Christ's Mass, right? Like
Exactly.
it's just, and the idea that we wouldn't have holidays to the people who, I mean, how could you not have feast days? That's what holidays are. They're feast days, right? So they've just
Yeah,
secularized
holidays
everything.
it stands for holy days.
Holy day, yeah. So
Mhm.
they've just taken they've taken the patrimony that they had, and in a fit of anti-Catholic, like it's just anti-Catholic. They've gotten rid of all of the Catholic feasts and festivals and holy days that we had and replaced them with secular people to admire and look. I mean, that these same people they get off for President's Day and Martin Luther King Day. It's like, why would you not rather have off, especially in the Middle Ages when you had a totally different kind of civilization? Like the church ensured that people weren't worked to death. It wasn't
Mhm.
6 days a week. Like they had enough holy days mixed in there that you felt like you lived a life and you weren't just a slave to your master.
Yeah, liturgical living. Whenever I was in the process of converting, I just asked myself the basic question, and you guys can ask it too. Like, if Protestantism is correct and the gospel is somehow just obscured for any time period between like Nicaea and 1600 or 1620 essentially, when do we really want to believe that like your average peasant in the 8th century England who is just going to holy days, going to mass, working the crops, etc., that all of them are damned, that there was just no hope? That's just such
Yeah.
a bleak view, which is
Th- that's
insane.
why that's why I want to get one of these Protestants on to just push them on their, like, if you really believe, like, the idea that some of them have, that the Roman Church is the whore of Babylon. Like, how preposterous that is. That, because what you're essentially saying is that Jesus Christ comes, dies for our sins, ascends into heaven, and now the gospel is he promises the kingdom. Like, that is the gospel. The gospel, he promises the kingdom. Now, their thesis is not only did the kingdom not come, but the devil's kingdom came, because the
Yeah.
Roman Catholic Church is a pagan cult that usurped Christianity. So the
Mhm.
idea that Constantine started the Catholic Church, right? So there's Christians for the first couple of years, and then Constantine starts the Catholic Church, and a pagan cult emerges instead of the gospel, and
Yeah, it's very Muslim.
it's hidden for 1500 years until the holy Martin Luther comes and rescues the gospel from the evil Catholic Church, who wouldn't let people read it, and they kept it chained up in the church.
The Luther who believes more in Catholicism than he does in modern
Yeah,
Protestantism.
believes baptism saves, believes that our Lady is a thing, believes sacramentology is a thing to a degree, of course. It's very Muslim, because like Islam's whole religion is based on the presupposition that the earlier forms of revelation given to Abraham, right, Moses and Abraham with the Torah, and the gospel with Christ were perverted by their followers, and so the last prophet had to come and
Mhm.
fix things out. Both Protestantism, Islam, and Mormonism all hinge upon a corruption theory. The church starts off good, it gets corrupt, someone has to reform it. That's not our Lord's promise. And it's also, even if I wasn't Catholic, even if I was an atheist, I'd still make this argument, because when you look at the writings of the early Christians, you don't see either of those three religions. You just don't.
You don't see either of those three religions, but the idea that it was hidden for that, and the things they think about the church are just so preposterous, like that the church wouldn't allow it to be translated into the vernacular when Latin was the vernacular, so that's why it translated it into Latin in the first place. And the idea that they were withholding the Bible, like they call it the Dark Ages, because the church wouldn't let the light of the world be. It's just so dumb.
People
Like, you
should
have
read
to be.
people should read the Summa and then tell me if this was the Dark Ages. I remember when I read through the Summa in a
People
monk
today can't
monastery.
read the Summa because we are in the Dark Ages now.
Yeah.
No, exactly. I when I walked out of the monastery last year after reading the Summa cover to cover, I found this meme and it was so true. It was just a meme of St. Thomas Aquinas looking very smug, and he just said like, it was like, after 1475, all the philosophy's gone downhill. People are only obsessed now with like gluttony, pornography, and communism and drugs. I was like, it's so true. Like people,
Yeah.
like today, we are literally enslaved to the darkness, but we think we're enlightened. Whereas Aquinas and the medievals are like, we are poor. We go to the King of Kings to get bread, and look what the king gives them.
Yeah, what they call the Dark Ages was actually the spreading of Christianity. It was like it's actually the light of the world spreading across the earth. The idea of that being the Dark Ages is
It was really the
ridiculous.
baptism of Europe. You know, you
Yeah.
had the Franks, the Saxons, the Angles, eventually, you know, all the Nordics, all baptized in what we call the Dark Ages.
Not just cheap shots here. It's
Yeah.
just like we say it all the time, like low IQ arguments. Like you have to have absolutely no deeper thought into like how does Christianity spread. Like it's I don't know, it's frustrating sometimes because you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and but like even I saw what James White tweeted about the Pope dedicating the year to Our Lady. Like he's dedicating the Jubilee to Our Lady. So he did kind of like almost a consecration prayer that he put out, and it went out on Twitter. And I just saw all the typical Protestants lambasting it as idolatry. And it's like, this is like the first good thing I've seen Francis do in a while. I was happy about it, and there's not a thought into what if even their theory is right that the Roman Catholic Church created a new religion. What happens with the East? Why does the East hold the same theological positions as we do on Mary and things like that? So I know Nick will fight
Sacramentology, yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Protestants
have to believe that the whole.
Go ahead,
Nick. Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, no, the Holy
You're
Spirit
good. You
did
can go
not
for it.
guide the church, and therefore Christ's promises are meaningless, or the Holy Spirit immediately led the church. Yeah, it's
Pretty much.
it's Christ promised the kingdom, and instead of the kingdom, the body of the devil came. Like it's so diabolical what they think. It's an inversion that Christ promises the kingdom of heaven, and instead we got the kingdom of hell in its place. Like I don't know how anybody can hold that position.
They don't realize that the gospel is the proclamation of the kingdom, which is the church.
Yeah.
They think the gospel is a proclamation that they themselves personally were saved. That's all they care about.
Think about how
So
narcissistic
true,
that
JB.
is. Like think about
Trail
how
of Blood. Do you guys know what this reference is right here?
yes.
Yeah, Trail of Blood, for people who don't know. Essentially in Protestantism, there's two, as it says, revisionists of history. It's so true. There's two various theories. There's one theory which is like the Luther Calvin theory, which is that the church starts off good, and then all these accretions get built up. Yes, I use that term for memory. All these accretions get built up, and then the church eventually has to be reformed. The Trail of Blood theory, though, is this theory made by what's called primitive Baptists, which are Baptists particularly
that we killed
in
like 50 million people in Europe.
Well, it's part of this, but it's even more ludicrous. It's this belief by primitive Baptists that the early church, that the Catholic Church starts off, right? But the early church was always known by different names, and they have very few writings, and they were mostly underground until really the 17th century with the Baptists come forward. Now, I believed this growing up. This is what I was taught. It is insane. Groups that these Protestants think were Christians include people like the Albigensians, the Dantonists, these people who like deny the Trinity. They deny all these major dogma. They say that the Albigensians said that the God of the Old Testament was this evil God. They were Gnostics, the demiurge God, and that Christ came to free us from the bad God of matter. Oh yeah, that sounds a lot like Baptists today, right? No, it doesn't. And so it's an insane historical revision.
It's not, and 99% of Protestants you come across today are Nestorians. Like it's just a simple fact. None of them will say Mary is the mother of God. They split Christ's divinity and his humanity. They don't have any Christology at all. It's I don't know. All right, so let's go to the next clip where James White is talking about Calvin Robinson.
Yeah, people, I'm serious. They say it was the Albigensians. I'm not making this stuff up. Just look up Trail of Blood online, and you'll find all the weird Cathars, Dantonists, Paulists, like all kinds of insane groups.
Circumcellians,
they claim.
The crazy ones that wanted to be martyred.
I'll give them the Waldensians, but they only go back to like 13 something. That's not to the early church.
Well, do you know why at the end of every Latin mass we pray the first gospel again,
Yes.
and we kneel at the Word became flesh. It
Yeah,
was to combat one of those heresies. I think it was the Cathars, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a Gallican thing that the whole church adopted to combat the Cathars, the Albigensian heresy.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that tradition stuck. So at the end of every Latin mass, after everything's done, we go back and we go through reading John 1, and we kneel at the Word became flesh to remind everybody of the incarnation.
Yes, Nick is right. The Waltons, Sam
The
Walton,
Waltons.
notorious heretic. Waldensians.
Yes, the Anabaptists go back to the 300s. Of course.
We actually did a show early on, and I couldn't make it. I was
I was going to say,
working,
don't say we. It was me and Jason.
Yeah, well, I tried to jump on, but it wound up being Rob and Jason about the Anabaptists. The Anabaptists were a wild group. They were right after the Reformation, and Martin Luther even condemned them, and they wound up taking over this town in Munster, and it was real mayhem.
Well, it's because they're really not Protestants in like that, in like a strict sense. They really
Radical
are an
Reformation.
earlier heretical kind of sect from more the Waldensian and Lollard sort of heretics from centuries before. So everyone hated them, and for good reasons. They were nuts.
My favorite AB episodes from at least the old days before I would jump on was when Anthony would be in his car and Rob would like notoriously throw out anti-Italian racism.
Remember that clip? That was like our first clip to hit like over 1,000 views.
That was a great clip. I love that.
Here we go again with Rob's anti-Italian discrimination.
Bring back racist Rob. Bring back racist Rob. I want it. Italy's a fake state.
Let's see what he says about Calvin Robinson now.
A lot of discussions are going on right now about this stuff online, and that's why I'm getting notifications and stuff like that, and it's distracting me. So I've seen a lot of argumentation to try to argue that Mary is co-mediatrix.
Can't even get that
her
right, man.
role as intercessor and stuff like that. I'd never seen this one. May have missed it.
Made it up.
It may not have just.
I love that he's taking you so seriously.
Should have. Don't know, but I had never seen it. And when I did see that, I almost responded to it. But there's a lot of stuff that
would have been fun.
I don't. You just have to let it pass. There was a day when I would have been up till 3:00 in the morning, fighting all that stuff. But
I'm gonna get him to take the bait one day.
But what happened was what you saw on the screen just a moment ago, which I'm sure Rich will put back up now that I'm mentioning it. But Calvin Robinson replied to that tweet by saying, "Based and Mary pilled." Now, he tends to do really short stuff. And the problem is when you do really short stuff, then everybody wants to ask you what you mean by that. And you may or may not get a response. But this is
the longest.
This fellow who's now
tells a story like a woman.
Yeah.
Dude, who, what, where, when, why? Just get to it. Why are we? Gosh.
Speaking at the Defeating Trash World conference with a bunch of Calvinists. And I start looking through some of his stuff and I start realizing this guy he is super ecumenical. He has moved from the Church of England to the Nordic Catholic Church, sort of a Scandinavian old Catholic type thing. He's currently, I think, in Michigan. And my understanding is the church that he is ministering in there is mixed. It's not fully
kind of like him. Couldn't help it.
Associated with some of these groups. I don't know. I do not claim to have expertise in all of the schismatic groups or less than full union groups or whatever.
From what? Schismatic from what?
That are or are not in submission to Rome for whatever reasons.
This is tedious to watch.
It really
I don't
is
know.
terrible.
But he's in the United States now.
Real.
But here he says this statement is based and Mary-pilled. Now, a lot of us were like, okay. And so what I did, go ahead and take that down. What I did is I
All right, so this
Okay,
will take
yeah, come
forever.
on,
It's like a 6-minute clip, but so what he did was he then proceeded to ask Calvin a bunch of questions, and Calvin kind of just got fed up and was like, Calvin called Calvin, historical Calvin. Calvin Robinson called Calvin a heretic. And this sent James White on a rampage of, well, this guy is speaking at this conference called Surviving Trash World or something, and it's basically run by Calvinists.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's about that Boniface option book I told you.
Oh, is that what it's about? Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Let me see. So, all right. So Calvin Robinson, I put his tweet up. So, does someone need to share your theology to fight alongside you? Based in Mary Pill would be a good shirt. Yeah.
Yep.
Does somebody need to share your theology to fight alongside you? For example,
yes.
Does one need to be reformed to engage in spiritual warfare? I have been invited to speak at an event titled Christ is King, How to Defeat Trash World, which I am looking forward to. I will be speaking with Christian nationalists about engaging in the culture wars, providing a British perspective to potentially warn our American cousins about some of the pitfalls we faced across the pond, hoping that they can avoid making the same mistakes. However, there has been a massive kickback from the Reformed camp over a Catholic in quotes he put with a small c, being invited to speak. No, I am not in communion with Rome, and yes, I would recognize John Calvin's teachings as heretical, but it raises a good question. How broad is the church? I know Roman Catholics who would say there is no salvation outside the church, the Roman Catholic Church. I know Baptists who would say Catholics are not saved. I would say both arguments are problematic and do not leave enough room for God's grace. However, the question remains, can we see Christ in each other despite major theological differences? Is affirming creeds, being baptized, and believing in the gospel enough? If not, where do we draw the line? If the Reformed camp can only work with other Reformed types, and Baptists can only work with other Baptists, and Catholics can only work with other Catholics, surely that division in the body of Christ means we are extremely limited. None of us can defeat Trash World on our own. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to say the difference in Catholic and Baptist and Calvinist is the universality of Catholicism versus any of those. Like all those other groups he's naming are very, especially the people he's talking about are very American Christian. Like they don't extend beyond, there's no unity amongst them other than this idea that the church is just a body of like-minded believers. So then when you start getting into the distinctions of what does it mean to be a like-minded believer, the whole thing falls apart. So what would you guys say is the line for where we can work with one another in a secular sense, I would say?
Okay, in a secular sense. Well, I would say in a secular sense, definitely the issues of morality, because these are issues of the natural law that one could say, okay, very clearly you have to draw a line. Like I'll say something that's controversial, not for this audience, but just in general. I think, as an example, if your gender identity, quote unquote, does not match your biological sex, then that is a mental issue. I think, therefore, if a society accepts that, that's a social contagion that has to be cleared out and taken care of. Therefore, we need every able-bodied man, woman, and child to fight against that social contagion. So in stuff like that, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, all of that, I think we can work together. When it comes to, though, greater issues, the first lesson in the Baltimore Catechism gives you the answer, right? We know how to love and serve God from the Catholic Church, which he established, and therefore that is the avenue to get to God.
Yeah, there's look, we're not supposed to worship at Protestant services, right? You're not supposed to there's clearly lines. I'll see your mental issue and raise you a D. Yeah. No, he's not wrong.
You are real.
I think, all right, let's see. I think trying to cancel Calvin Robinson is pretty weak and gay, but I also don't like when Protestants get invited and propped up as main speakers at Catholic events. So I kind of get that part.
I mean, so yeah, if it's specifically a Calvinist event, then who cares if they cancel, quote unquote, someone who isn't a Calvinist, right? But if their goal is to defeat trash world or whatever term they have for it, then
Yeah, because I don't see Calvin Robinson get all right. So this thing gets deeper in that you start seeing people saying, because this is a Christian nationalist conference, so they want to bring some form of Christian nationalism in. Now they're saying it's got to be a Calvinist nationalism, which is preposterous. And some of them are saying we won't accept anybody who venerates Our Lady, things like that. Like this kind of gets back to the earlier discussion we were saying where when a culture actually has a proper understanding of their religion and the cult, they actually build everything towards that cult. So when we were in Italy, you see a culture that built everything toward God. So all of those statues are all stories from the Bible. They're all stories about the things we're supposed to look at as the higher good. These people can't even see a space for that. It's a very why I mentioned Italy. You got a drink?
probably.
Is that a new
It's a very
drinking thing?
weird. It's definitely a very weird mentality because I mean, now that you bring it up, since this is a like Christian nationalist conference, half of historic Protestant denominations very vehemently believe in separation of church and state, and a few of
Yeah.
them don't. So you can't really, in my mind, have a conference like that unless you have some type of like fundamental political grounding that you all agree on. Like, should the church be involved with society, like in a law sense, a legal sense, or should it not? So it's kind of
Yeah,
weird.
this all got heated up, and Calvin Robinson blocked James White, and now there's like this concerted effort. I'm watching them all kind of like jump in to go after him, and they're trying to get him kicked off this thing. So Bobby says Protestants can't conserve anything. Their theology that they base their conservatism on is liberalism. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I think that a previous conference this guy put together had James Lindsay there. Now, James Lindsay is one of the most problematic people I see currently. He's terrified of anything that is not classical liberalism, and he doesn't see that classical liberalism inevitably leads to wokeism. Like it's just the
It leads to
natural
communism.
end of it leads to communism no matter what. Like there's
Mhm.
no way to put boundaries on it, you know?
Yeah. You can have, I think that's the issue is it's like, I had this conversation with someone not too long ago. Like the only way that one could try, and I'm saying this to try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but just try to save liberalism is you have to flesh out that thesis in the declaration of what is nature's God and what are the rights entitled by nature's God. But if you don't flesh out whose nature's God is, then it all collapses. And that's the issue is that unless we say, okay, here's God, he made man this way, and therefore we need to act this way, unless you have that system, it all falls apart.
So, all right. So we have Calvin coming on in 2 weeks. Calvin Robinson's coming on. He's we have him
Very
booked for January 14th, I believe.
Yep.
Right, Rob?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think
Anthony's
Calvin
not part of the woke right. He's part of the WAP right.
The WAP right. According to James Lindsay, though, I am woke right because I'm Catholic. Like he doesn't like any of the traditional Catholic stuff going on, and that's what he's kind of fighting against. So, all right. So we do have Calvin Robinson coming on in 2 weeks. Going forward, Rob and I are going to try and get more guests on. I told you guys that I reached out to Brian Holdsworth. So if there's any guests you guys like to see us try and get on, leave a comment. Let us know.
At the end of the month, we have Connor Gallagher from TAN, the president of TAN, coming on.
Oh, cool.
To talk about parenting. So that should be a good one.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. I have a few guests in mind, but yeah, leave some comments about who you guys want to get on. I would love to get Peugeot, and that's what we're going to actually go and speak about on the other side right now. Nick's got to fly, so I want to make sure we get to do that clip with him. So we're not going to do the full hour over here. We're going to jump over to locals now.
Oh, what a guy! What a nice guy.
On locals, we got a couple of Peugeot and Frad clips I want to play.
Yay, more Peugeot.
We have he's got a very interesting take on why he went Orthodox instead of the FSSP, because his parents, like his dad was originally a Catholic, and he's from Montreal, so like the natural thing to do would be Catholic.
Yeah.
So he talks about going to checking out an FSSP parish beforehand, and he had some things to say about that, and ultimately what made him go Orthodox. We're going to try and do this.
Yes, I want Father Isaac so bad.
Yeah, we're going to work on that.
Father Isaac, I'd love to have Father Nick's back on, because do you guys want, leave it in the actual comments of this video? Giving us a comment helps us so much, you guys. Like, actually, like in the official video itself, helps us so much promote it in the algorithm. But tell me, like, do you want us?
Please share it.
Yeah, please share it, please. It helps us. It helps
like,
quite a lot. But I'm thinking it would be cool at least one night to have a full night, maybe like a 2-hour stream just here on YouTube, where we specifically answer moral theology questions. That would be really fun. If you two get bored, I can host it. But I think that'd be fun. Just to have like one big night of
fun,
like
for sure.
moral theology would be amazing.
Yeah, so don't leave the comments here, guys. Wait till the video's over and leave the comments on the comment, because it does help in the out. Like if they see a discussion going on in the comments, and that it promotes the video. So you guys can always help.
Good. Gabby After Hours. I'd love to talk to both of them. I'll get an SSPX priest on here, and then we'll be really based.
And just so you know, I have completed my trad LARP and purchased a tweed sport coat. So now I can be a part of any big stream with someone like Bishop Williamson.
Let's go. You got the tweed coat.
All right. One of the goals this year is going to be for me to ambush Kevin James after Mass and see if I can get him on here. But he doesn't seem to do any interviews like that. So
one of the other goals this year is to raise funds to bail Anthony out of jail after that.
No, wait. Rob and I are actually talking about like doing a fundraiser for something. So we'll talk to you guys about that when we have it a little more fleshed out. So all right, we're gonna go to the other side. We'll see you guys over. Oh, if you're not already subscribed to Locals, it's very cheap, $5 a month. It helps me and Rob keep the lights on over here. And super chats we always love, because that's how we pay Nick. So if you guys either of those are a great help to the show. So we will see you guys over on the other side. Take us out, Rob.
Okay, I'm just gonna kill it.
Adios.